So Link, it's been a while since I talked to you, like what, a year and a half or something like that since I was on. I think I was on your show, kind of prior to the release of Kingpin Reloaded or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's been a while. I can probably give you a much better idea for it. But yeah, no, it's been a while at least. Um my notes say yeah, about a year, 2023 April, May? May. So yeah, that means we would have recorded it a good chunk ago.
yeah, man, it's like kind of crazy. I'm really glad to be. I mean, by the time this comes out, I'll be probably like 6 weeks or so into it. But like actually putting out episodes again, it was such a long hiatus for me. But I really, I think I, would probably have one too many drinks or whatever, and I'd text you in the middle of the night, be like, "Dude, I'm just so happy you're doing what you're doing because I like if I wasn't doing, if I'm not doing it, nobody's doing it." And now it's really interesting because like when I first started in the Keep, I felt like there was really no one at all covering that space, and then people like you came along, and it's just really nice to see the indie game sphere, and for you now, man, that you've had some really impressive guests, like not even just indie stuff. So yeah, like really getting the deep interviews with game devs, and I wouldn't include like IGN's podcast. There's a lot of gaming podcasts out there, but I don't know, they're not formatted the same way. Where it's just like two people on a microphone having a genuine discussion, and there's a lot more like showbiz going on. I'm not a big fan of that. I don't hate it or anything, but it's just not my thing. I'm just so grateful that you're doing what you're doing, man. And I was listening to, oh my goodness, it was Dan from Larian or Obsidian Studios,
uh
a narrative designer. I don't know. I've been trying to go back through your catalog because I think I missed a lot too.
I've spoken to a few Dans, I think. But I think the last one that you might be meaning is Dan Pierce, but he was a lead developer at Strange Scaffold.
Was
Um, when it
somebody who
comes
was a
to
narrative designer,
s-
I believe.
that was Connor Wall, I want to say.
Mm.
I have to double check now because my I'm horrible with names, so that makes everything even worse. Yeah, Connor Walsh. He was the Obsidian Entertainment narrative designer. Yeah.
Yep. Actually, what happened was I finished that episode and then it auto played another one, and I'm looking at the wrong thing. But yeah, but no, that's really cool, dude. Like, it's really interesting. Like how many like I remember having a conversation with you like shortly after you started the show, and you were kind of in that early phase of I don't know how to get certain guests or more listens and all that kind of stuff. And I just like, keep doing it, bro. Just fuck it. And then the next thing I know, you got like Rami Ismail on. I'm like, dude, this guy has eclipsed me. Like I'm like, what am I doing with my life?
So
Um,
like I honestly I don't know why people keep agreeing to come on. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna pretend that like I have any like idea, but people just keep agreeing to come on, and I'm thankful. I'm happy for it. But like some of the people that say yes, I'm like cool, awesome. I don't know how or why this is working out, but it's working out. Um I was making the joke for a long time that my podcast was successfully unsuccessful in that I was getting people to come on, but I wasn't getting a whole bunch of people to listen to it.
yeah.
But then I stopped making that joke because it was people kept telling me it was too dismissive of like what I'm doing. So I'm like, okay, I should stop. Should stop like intentionally shitting on myself.
I mean, there's always a place for kind of self-deprecation and if it's in good humor, but I mean, the truth, I always tell people the same thing if it's like about podcasts. It does not matter how many people listen. It matters who's listening. Like, because the connections that you make are what really makes a podcast worthwhile, and it will grow over time. I mean, even Joe Rogan at first was just him and his buddy, in the spare bedroom of a house, just doing random shit for a long time with no. They didn't even have tracking software back then. They had no idea how many people were listening. But you talk to one guy, they recommend you to another guy, they recommend to next thing you know everybody in the games industry, and that was for my career, the podcast is the best thing I've ever done, uh, by far. If anybody would ever ask like, hey, I'm thinking about I don't know, going into and then insert topic. And as long as it's not, being a surgeon, I would just say don't go to school for that. Just start a podcast about it and then just talk to as many people who do that as humanly possible. And you will learn and you'll have control of it and potentially also make money doing it. It's like sound like Ben Reichstein. We were talking about him before we started recording here, but yeah, like him doing the Field and Foley podcast. I was like, that's a great idea. And in that regard, it happens a lot in our show formats. I mean, I've seen how yours is kind of like diversified over time because there are things that even you and I, we know a lot about game design, but don't consider until someone brings it up or you meet someone who does a certain job. But in his case, it was like, I was like, how many sound designers are you going to run into? Turns out a lot. And then the next thing I know, it goes from video games to he's talking to people who are making, movies, like major motion. He had the sound designer of Mad Max on his show at one point. Like, what the hell? How did you do that? And it was much faster than either of us, I think, even progressed in terms of getting like name guests on or however you want to put it. But for your show, I'm curious, like what the vision was in the beginning versus how you see it now.
So weirdly enough, at the beginning, originally I got the idea to do this, like the pandemic hit and I was just sort of bored.
Mm-hmm.
Like not to put it like so bluntly or glibly, I was just sort of trying to figure out something to do. And I kept having issues with how I perceive games. And like it just, I don't want to say I was toxic, but I was just unhappy. And I'm the type of person that if there's a glitch, I'm going to hit it. And if I hit it, it would piss me off and that would severely taint my view of the game.
Right.
And like, I don't mean like little glitches. I mean like big ones. And it would just like my friend, I'd complain to him. He'd be like, none of this is like, I'm experiencing none of this. I don't know how, I don't know why. You're so unlucky. But like, if there was something that could go wrong, it would hit me. So like, I was like, I need to refocus or put like a new perspective on this. So I'm not like getting so pissed off at nothing all the time. So like, I thought of these questions, the main handful of questions that even themselves are no longer the same after all this time. But it was like to put a perspective and remind myself that developers are people. Because like it's not like I was like I was gonna get out there on Twitter and like fuck you, go kill yourself kind of shit. Like it's not that kind of toxicity. It was the kind of toxicity that like poisons my enjoyment, right?
Right.
So like the questions, just who they are, what they do, like their favorite game, like that kind of stuff. It allowed me to be like, no, these are people, and it lets me kind of like live vicariously through other people's enjoyment or other people's fond memories or whatnot. So yeah, I just sort of swung at it. Like at one point, I knew what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to have, and that was basically the whole like Larry King approach, or people like Larry King, where like they sit down and they have like 5 questions, and hell or high water, they're asking their 5 fucking questions, and that's the end of it.
Yep.
Because like I watched people doing interviews before I started to figure out like how the structure could or should work, and like some of his would just be like, someone would be like, yeah, this, he'd ask a question, they'd be like, yeah, this, this means a lot to me because like my mom and we used to do this a lot when I was a kid, and then she passed away, and this is my way of remembering her. And Larry King would just be like, uh-huh. So this new movie, and like would just like ignore this thing they just said, right? Like, so like I was like, I don't want to be, and like I'm not shitting on Larry King. I want to be very clear on that. But like that interview style was not what I wanted, was not like the thing that resonated with me. So I was like, no, I need to be more conversational. I need to have something that's more, just kind of in the moment ish. And then I spoke with one person. I'm not going to say who, just because I don't really believe in the whole dropping names. And I could also just be wrong because it was an early episode and they were doing their laundry. And I could hear, because I know this because it was an LG, and I could hear their like their dryer or their washer chiming off. And I was like, it was kind of, I don't want to say it was annoying me, but it was I'm kind of sitting there. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And like, that was the moment where I'm like, no, I need to be even more relaxed. I need to like step back and be even more casual, or like try and, just live in the moment more. So like, and ever since then, it's just been every time I edit an episode, I think to myself, like, or if I do something egregious where I just miss a huge, like, potential, like, topic stream or something I could have followed up on, I, like, write notes on it because, that's just how you get better, how I get better. So, like, ever since I heard the laundry machine, I was like, "No, no, I can be better." And it's
Yeah.
just try and be more casual, but try and be more in the moment of it. And, like, stick to asking the questions that are more or less just easy, lighthearted questions, softballs, if you will, that will, like, let people fucking just realize that, game devs are people that, like, their favorite game is, I don't know, League of Legends or whatever, and, like, why it's their favorite game or what have you, right?
Yep. I think
I think
one
that answered your question. I'm sorry if it
no,
didn't.
it's okay. It's all tangential here. Like there, I unlike you, I don't give a damn what questions we ask. I don't have an agenda ever really. I mean, there might be like stuff that's like sort of I know I want to cover these things with this person because that's what they do. But like I don't ever write down lists of questions if that makes sense. I really want
Yeah, I know, I
conversations to
understand.
feel natural for me. I think I was going to ask you this, but I'll go ahead and kind of get it started since it's free form here. Haha, we're doing jazz, bro. Um, uh, so I got into listening to podcasts, and what I was listening to were all, the two people in a microphone, conversational, tell me about yourself kind of stuff. And then that's what I thought podcasts just were. I didn't I didn't until much later, get into any shows that were like these sort of formatted, more, produced, I should say, kinds of shows. Or even if it's something like the Y Files or like Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, which is one of my favorite things of all time. Like these really, you know, structured, long form sorts of things that are one person kind of telling whatever the topic is. That was so alien to me at first. So I just approached it from the jump with the idea that I'm going to do basically what, you see Lex Friedman, Joe Rogan, Mark Maron, those kinds of guys were doing. The first podcast that I actually ever listened to ever was called The Art of Wrestling. And it was like this indie wrestler named Colt Cabana, who's like actually moderately famous if you're like a pro wrestling nerd or whatever. But just his show was exactly that. It was like 90 minutes roughly of just talking to other wrestlers about what their life was like. And it could go anywhere. It didn't have to be strictly just tell me about wrestling stuff. And I just thought that was just how it was done. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. But like for you, what were the podcasts that you did listen to? Like what were the things that got you into podcasts in general?
So, honestly, I don't think there weren't a lot of interview ones that I listened to at
Mm-hmm.
all, really. Like, early on, the stuff that I was listening to, because, like, ever since the pandemic, podcasts have been harder for me to do just because when I was at work, I could listen to them over lunch, or I could listen to them while I was doing stuff that didn't require me to be thinking a lot.
Mm-hmm.
However, just being at home, I have enough distractions, or working from home. So, like, I kind of fell out of listening to a lot of stuff. So, like, even then, though, I wasn't listening to a lot of highly formatted things in the way that you're getting at. Like, for example, I would listen to stuff like, I used to listen to stuff like lore, which, is sort of like, in the sense it would be like an essay kind of thing. It had some production values, some sound, what have you, but it was usually just talking about like myths or stories that were related to like supernatural myth-esque things or what have you. Um the stuff I listened to the most though would have been a lot of stuff from Max Fun. So like the stuff from like the McElroys or Jordan Jesse Go. Uh there used to be from one of them, it was called The Turnaround, but, there hasn't been an episode in years. I think it was an NPR thing that, I think it's Jesse Thorne from Max Fun, he did when he worked with NPR or something like that, and those were probably the closest things, uh, to proper sit-down interview kind of what have you, because that's what it was. Like those were sit down interviews. But outside of that, I really didn't listen to anything that wasn't like comedy esque stuff. That was, a handful of people with a microphone just fucking around, right?
Right. Right. I I think the first truly formatted show, like produced podcast that I heard was Neil Tyson's Star Talk Radio. And it would be like basically him, Bill Nye, and then a comedian, whoever they picked at the time. And I think they have like more regular people nowadays. But they would still do interviews, but it would be like Neil interviewing someone like in his office privately. And then the panel would like listen to just segments of that interview. You never hear the full interview, which I thought was so strange. It was still a very informative, very interesting show, but it was just like, why do they do it that way? And it just feels a little bit, I don't know, it feels like not human. It feels like, I don't know why maybe some people prefer it that way, like in these kind of digestible bites. But for me, like I love a 4 hour long conversation. Maybe I'm an outlier, but clearly there's a lot of shows that can get away with that. So, I can't be all wrong. But it's just, I love that stuff. Even if it's like 50% just whatever comes to mind. I don't know. I think I just love the art of conversation more so than I care about like getting to the point. Or a lot of people are very driven by. I just want give me exactly the timestamp of the things that I care about so I can move on with my life. But then I think about it the other way, and I think I do treat video games that way a lot, where I'm like, I'll as much as I enjoy it, I'm like, I have a limited amount of time. I've got to I'm just going to look up the guide so I can get through this part or whatever. And that's something I need to, I guess, confront in my own self. It's like a cognitive dissonance thing. Or maybe I just like conversations more than video games.
So like what you're saying is I know exactly, like I have an idea of where
Yeah.
like the realm that you're in. I don't want to say I know exactly, but like I I know there's definitely podcasts that do that. And you see like these little bite-sized 3-4 minute whatevers sitting on YouTube, or like 60-second like shorts and stuff like that. And that was kind of part of why I was like, I should start doing shorts just to have something as like a promo. And
Right.
like I would struggle so hard to find just a 60 fucking second clip, something that I could clip that wasn't going to, that like kind of had a sound bite, right? As much as I fucking hate to say like a sound bite, it just sounds so, I don't know,
Oh, I
up
know
your own
exactly
ass
what you
kind of
mean.
thing. Um, but like, I'd see all these other podcasts, and I don't understand how, but they always seem to pull it off that like they have these little succinct answers or questions that can just fit neatly into it. Um, I'm I don't know if that's by design or if that's just how things work, or if it's just uh uh like a cognitive bias to only seeing those and not realizing like that's once an episode or once every few episodes they can pull that off cleanly or whatever. But like I've always not understood how that works, like how people get lucky like that. And like, cause it never worked for me, which is also why I started doing lightning round questions, which are just nonsense bullshit questions
Yeah.
that aren't, they're just like not, they're meant to hopefully be fun, like, like what video game character spends too much time thinking about like the Holy Roman Empire, or like who thinks they're a thirst trap, but they have no business to. Like, they're not meant to be any real question, right? And I'm like, this works because this is hopefully fun, and like I can put that into a promo and throw it out there, right? Again, not to like be like creating soundbite content, because it's not meant to be like these huge sound bites. It's just meant to be nonsense. And that was my approach, or my attempt at like hitting those kind of things.
I I've never done that. I think the only time I ever did that, like anything remotely close to that, was like I just wanted little bits to throw into the old intro that the show had, where it's just like guests just saying random words or phrases or whatever. But so I guess a tangent we could really go on for ourselves and for people out there who may be interested in starting their own podcast is like a lot of the advice that was given to me, I, and this is not just in podcasting, this is just in general, like the people who are giving you advice, I'm like, you got to do this, you got to have sound bites, you got to do these kinds of promos, that kind of stuff. And then I would always look at the people who were at the top of the heap and notice that they're not doing any of the things that people are saying. So, for instance, you got to promote your show with a 5-second or 15-second clip on Twitter or whatever, and like Lex Friedman does not do that. And half the time, there's no announcement whatsoever before the episode comes out, and then it's just like, "Hey, this is the thing today," or like maybe like a picture of him and whoever he's interviewing, but that's about it. And neither does now that I'm thinking about it, like Mark Maron didn't do that. Rogan certainly doesn't do that. Who are some of the other people I'm thinking of? Like, I'm talking interview-based podcasts, of course. God, who is that guy who was like an MTV VJ who became a podcaster? I'm gonna have to Google it now because it's gonna irritate me.
Yeah, you're not gonna have much luck asking me that one.
Well,
I like stay out of, like, as bad as it is to say, I like to kind of go into things as blind as I possibly can be, because the blinder I am, the less expectations of myself for how I think I should move forward in terms of like the minute to minute, as well as I have less idea of how, like, I'm not going to be unconsciously or subconsciously trying to guide the conversation to a certain point. Um, like, well, yes, I like to try and, if I can find like a nice, easy transition between questions, I'm not intentionally sitting to try and create ways to go from A to B to C, because like that kind of betrays the whatever. So like I'm really unaware of like a lot of other people in the sphere and how they operate, unless I'm going looking just to have an idea for my own personal growth, if that makes any sense.
I think it's also a personality thing. Real quick, it was Adam Curry, who is probably better known now as a podcaster than he ever was for MTV stuff or whatever. But he was like one of the original major interview podcasts. Like maybe the first, I'm not sure. But it was like, oh my gosh, this guy has a podcast. What's a podcast kind of time frame? But anyway, so yeah, personality wise, I think just different interviewers or different hosts have different ways of doing things. So, for some people, like you said, the Larry King approach, where it's like, I have my questions, I'm getting to my questions. This is what I care about. I personally feel like I'm a bit more of like a mirror. So I don't really see it like, I don't have an agenda necessarily of like the topics I want to cover, so much as I think it's just important that I keep the guest interested. So, whatever you want to talk about, right? And then my job is just to kind of like keep the conversation moving and not have you get bored or stop talking. And you have some guests, and this is something that comes with a lot of time, and I'm sure you've experienced this too. Some guests are like Dave Oshry, right? You don't have to interview Dave Oshry. You just have to give him a microphone and then shut up. Pretty much, he's just going to talk, and that's great. That's a day off as far as I'm concerned. But then you have other people who you kind of have to keep. You have to keep giving something to get something out of it. Maybe more introverted folks, people who are not as comfortable speaking publicly. I've had quite a few of those where it's like, it's not that it's not a bad thing, but it's just like it requires a bit more from me to kind of keep them interested, keep them flowing, and get the information I'm looking for out of them, because they're not necessarily just going to think to volunteer it.
Yes, I know. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, and those are usually the ones where where when I'm editing, I'm the hardest on myself, because it's like, oh, I did, like, I really fucked up. I failed here, because where it's like I'll hear some like awkwardness on my end,
Yeah.
that I don't know if it translates. I know it's awkwardness because I'm remembering the moment, right? So like, for other people, it's probably not. It um, probably comes off fine. But like when I'm listening to it, I'm like making notes. I'm like, they mentioned X. I really could have followed up on it, but because I was just because like I didn't know, like, because it was a little, I don't want to say harder, but it was a different personality that I was trying to match energy, right? That I just sort of lost sight of the things I could have done to give them a chance to like get out there. luckily that hasn't happened in a while, for a long while, actually, I want to say. I don't remember the last time it happened, but when it does happen, it's definitely one of those moments where I'm like listening and making, a full page worth of notes where it's like, in the future, be better, do better. And like saying how to do better, right? Like I know how to give myself critique. It's not like I'm just writing like you fucked up, you suck. It's just like you missed your chance. They talked about this and you ignored it, or like you didn't realize, or you were too busy trying to like figure out how to do something else, that you missed this amazing opportunity or whatever, right? So like, yeah, like I know what you're saying, and like for some people, yeah, it's like you give them the chance and they just go, and it's like, well, okay.
Thank you for listening to In the Keep. Please consider taking a moment to leave a review, comment, a like, and subscribe on your listening platform of choice. It really helps, and it's greatly appreciated. If you really love the show and want to see it grow, consider supporting us via Patreon. Supporters get episodes early, exclusive content and updates, chances to ask questions to guests, access to In the Keep's video games, and whatever else I can do for you. Every little bit helps. This podcast directly supports my ability to do what I love the most and to take care of my growing family. You can find links to everything that I'm talking about here over at inthekeep.com. Thank you, bless you, and enjoy the show.
Like this is interesting. Let's see where this goes. Like Dave Oshry, for example, since you dropped him, um, he was one of the first people that, on the topic of like getting into games, was like, don't just sell drugs, you'll make more money that way. The context, I believe, in his scenario was, if you think making games is about making money, don't just sell drugs.
Yeah, he was
Which
selling
was
sunglasses and probably lots of other things at one point. Dave's been around in a lot of different ways. Like, I actually really admire his career path because he too was like basically a journalist who slowly got into producing games.
he
Right? Like,
started writing about WoW, I think he said.
yeah, he was like, basically, I think, just kind of working, and then on the side, he was doing articles for a bunch of different websites and everything, and yeah, World of Warcraft, and I think he was one of the first people in the world to play Skyrim, I want to say. I mean, he just slowly worked his way into it. Then he ended up in the Rise of the Triad remake, and then that slowly just turned into a full on career.
Somehow that didn't fuck him up.
I mean, I'm not trying to cut off your point because you were still talking, but I would just say that is good advice. Like don't get into games, just go sell drugs. I'm not saying go sell drugs necessarily, but there are a lot less stressful ways to make money.
Yes, exactly.
It is not something that, if you're one of those people out there who like are looking for a job and you want to have a 9 to 5 and a work-life balance, this is not the career for you. And I've seen that both, from interviewing people and also from being in the industry. I hate when people say the industry. I don't even know why I just said that. Shoot me. But being in the video games production business period is not a 9 to 5 job. It doesn't exist, and then people who have that expectation when they get into it are always crushed or unsuccessful.
I don't know where to follow with that one. Like I'm not in a position to disagree. Like I have a 9 to 5. I work my 9 to 5. I try to not give a shit outside of my 9 to 5.
Right.
Like I'm rather, I don't want to say cagey. I'm quiet about my job because some people would probably argue I'm not allowed to do the podcast if I'm ever made, right? So like they're wrong, by the way. I want to be very clear on that. Like if anyone's listening, like, oh, you're doing something stupid. Like, no, I'm well within my rights. I just work with, or not well within my like rights in terms of work stuff. But like I don't talk about my job a lot because it's just, one, it doesn't matter, largely speaking. But it's like I've had one person be like, "Are you in the industry?" I'm like, "No, like that's not a lie. It's not like I'm bound by an NDA and this is just me flying under the radar, within the realm of that." It's like, just no, like I don't want to be made because I don't want the headache of having to sit in a stupid boardroom and have to listen to someone going, "So we think you're okay," but be like, "No, I don't." But yeah, no, what I'm getting at is yeah, I don't think I would survive doing a job where the 9 to 5 is such an ambiguous thing
Mhm.
that like I would have to fight to have it, like fight to have that kind of peace and be like, yeah, crunch time, who gives a shit? Um, like I'm done for the day. Good night, goodbye. Laptop's closed, out the door, kind of thing. Um, and
I
like
can't stand it. Like, when that happens, it drives me insane. Like, when I see someone
the
do that, I literally have that shitty attitude of, like, "You don't belong here," which is
well,
toxic on my part.
just
Uh,
in general for people just not wanting to like work unpaid overtime and shit.
um, well, I would say certainly depends on what job you have, but I mean, so here's what annoys me about. I'm going to try to articulate this without coming across as a complete dick. Uh, when you have someone who actively says things like, "I love the games industry. It's the only thing in the world I want to do. Um, I this is my passion in life," and then would not take a job in any other thing. And then to them, it's just like you're just gonna stop working at 2:30, regardless of the fact that the job needs to be done. I'm not saying that they should be not getting paid for the overtime, although I will say that most contracts that I've ever seen do not specify the number of hours per week that you're required to work. They're like, or even they will say you're paid for 40 hours and then you have an additional amount of pay for for the fact that you are going to work overtime and that's included in this salary. It's not hourly paid. Um, and it's your right to walk away. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm like, you you, you can't say you're passionate about it and then not actually have any passion for it. I guess that's where I'm coming from. Does that make any sense, or do I just sound like a douchebag?
I understand what I understand what you're saying, but I I don't work in the industry. I think
Sure,
that's the safest thing is so it's like I it's what an individual person chooses to do and the expectations that they have and that they hold themselves to, like that's person to person, right? Like for me, like I said, I'm just a normal everyday programmer 9 to 5.
sure,
Um I'm I don't give a shit about crunch. Like coming up to release, if my boss came to me and was like, "This shit's behind. We need it for the end of this week." And if I'm behind, my answer is going to be, "Well, yeah, I fucked up. It's on me," and I'll quietly do some shit and get it done. Or if it's like it was dropped last minute, my response is going to be, "Cool. Are we paying for him? Like, are you gonna, are we paying me for my extra time?" Um, but like largely speaking, just because of the 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 structure that I'm in, I typically don't have to worry about it. So like I'm not going to judge someone that says I'm going to work all this overtime. I'm going to do the crunch and I don't care, right? So like I understand what you're saying. It's just I'm not in that world, so
hmm
it's hard for me to like align with someone in it and like judge or think of how they think about that approach. I hope all of that makes sense. It's just
no,
what it really comes down to is, like I said, that's not the world I have to live in. So like my view and my bias for it is largely around how I exist and how I need to exist for my 9 to 5.
no, there's a lot of different, like, you've sparked off so many different
It's really nuanced.
potential paths
Basically, it's the short.
in my mind. It is nuanced, and I think that part of it is the use of the word crunch and what that means in people's minds versus the reality of what actually happens. And it's different, I'm sure, at different companies. So I've never had ever a moment where a producer or a boss came and said, everybody has to stay and work overtime to finish on a deadline. Ever. That's never happened to me. Um, I've had that happen in the military, but that's the military, so it's different. I know from hearing it that that does happen in the games industry to a large degree at bigger companies. But I guess what I'm trying to articulate is not that people should work overtime. What I'm saying is if if you're not so in love with making video games that you would basically die for it, like it's your fucking number one thing in the world, I just don't think you ought to pursue that path, because if you are going to just come in at 7 and leave at 2:30 or whatever, you're you're very likely not going to be successful in the industry, period. You're just going to be. I guess it also depends on what your particular specialty is too. I suppose if you're like a QA tester, you can probably get away with like, well, I came in, I tested this many bugs, I got off on time, no big deal. But then it's like if you're a programmer and your job is to fix all the bugs that the QA guy did, and you have a deadline, your day's likely not going to end just whenever you want it to, unless you just don't care about the outcome of the product, because it's art. So, if you're gonna make a statue, you don't stop carving the statue when 5 o'clock comes around. You finish the piece of work. Now, can you come back tomorrow? Sure. But if your client ordered it at a certain time and you promised at a certain time, you have to deliver it on time and of a certain quality.
Like, yes,
Okay.
I understand what you're saying, and
Sure.
yes, that's the nuanced balance of like timelines and deadlines
Mhm.
and everything, right?
Yeah.
Um, but like I said, that's not the world. Luckily, the world I have to live in. I don't have to do that balance myself, more
Right.
or less.
Right.
Um, like I said, there's times where I'm behind because I'm behind. I fucked up or I fucked around when I shouldn't have, and now I need to like make up the time, and I'll do that quietly, right? Like I do it, but like I'm not gonna I'm not gonna I'm not gonna light myself on fire for the stuff I'm doing if I don't have to, and if I'm not being paid for it. Um, and
Yeah.
like I said, luckily for me, that's not something that has to come up a lot just because of the structure of where I am. We are, it's normal 9 to 5 programming. It's like just like not a thing that my my employer, it's not a thing we put ourselves in the position of. Like I used to work at a company. Um, I'm not going to say who because the fucking second in command right now is a real dickhead. I don't really feel like drawing his ire, and he'll have him come along and be like, "Oh, he's full of shit with what he's saying."
Yeah.
Um, but like they did that shit all the fucking time, and like they would just deploy stuff to prod. Like they had weird crunch rush stuff. Like it was terrible, and like it was incredibly toxic, and like I I just want to avoid that kind of toxicity. And like luckily the place I'm at, we don't have it inside of uh like where I am, like inside of my group, if you will, or
Yeah.
whatever, because different divisions and all that fun shit. It 100% exists in another division, or two, but like I'm safe from it, and I'm going to keep trying to be safe from it as long as I can. Um, but really quickly, the reason, if you're wondering why I don't want to draw the ire of the other guy, because even if it's just a matter of saying I work there, um, I had to listen to someone like get fucking murked on a phone call,
Mhm.
and like I really don't want to have to like bring that up and have it like go incredibly public where the
Yep.
company is, and have them like try and argue with me over it and be like, dude, like no, like it happened. Like the head of HR messaged me. They're like, "You can have the rest of the day off if you want." I'm like, "No, okay, I'm good." But like, yeah, if you're wondering why I am cagey about saying that where I work there, it's just because I don't trust that if that were to get out, that the second in command wouldn't be a fucking dickhead and like come after me for reasons unknown. But he picks fights with people on Twitter for reasons unknown. So like, it's not outside the realm of possibility.
I completely relate to where you're coming from. Like when I started the show for the first 3 years, I was still active duty in the Air Force. So I was very, I talked about what I did. Like I would say I'm a weather forecaster and talk about that, but I would never say where I worked, because I did essentially, even though it was totally like in every way legal, it's like if I were talking about the Air Force while in the Air Force, then legally I would have to get it cleared with like basically Air Force public relations. You know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
they might have rules or whatever. So I just like if I just don't mention them at all, it wasn't a problem. And also, like I was much more shielded about my identity. Like originally, I would just be the motherlode, and then over time, I relaxed about that. And then once I got out, I was like, okay, and now I can fucking talk about anything I want because I wouldn't even, I still don't. But if somebody wanted to talk about politics, I would just tell them like, we're not doing that because for me, it's when you're in the service, at least, it is illegal to talk shit about the president. It's like you're basically the legal term is like um you're criticizing a superior officer because technically the president is like the head of the military. So it would be if I went like you're doing right now, but you're keeping your anonymity and you're not saying any names. But if I had been talking bad about my supervisor or the colonel or whatever, talking bad about the president is the same thing.
Yeah.
Now you can do that, privately, but if you're doing it publicly, now you're committing a crime. So I don't want anything to do with that. Like I don't even want to touch it. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that I understand why you have the veil, the curtain, so to speak, and that's fine. I think that's probably healthy, a lot healthier than like putting your identity out to the world because then things come with that.
Like, yeah, I imagine at some point, one day, there's a chance I'm gonna get made, and like I'll have to go to my boss and just be like, "Hey, everything I've been doing is above board." Because like I'll use the military, the Air Force thing, for example.
Yeah.
Like if I was Air Force, I'd be like, at no point have I spoken about the Air Force. And at no point have I said my real name. At no point have I alluded to X, Y, or Z, right?
Yeah.
So like and then whatever major, I don't know the structure of military stuff. My analogy is falling apart in this case, but like at that point they'd have to be like, yeah, look, we get it, you didn't. They would still then have to sit me across a fucking boardroom table, and we'd have to have a real conversation where everything I just kept saying was, by our bylaws, I am above board. By our guidelines, by our whatever, everything's above board. But I just don't want to do that. And like the moment I have to, it's going to be one of those things where like it's going to have to be damn well worth my time and effort to make myself in that case, like
Yeah.
I don't in this point in time, I don't know what that means, like what would be quantifiable as the worth. But like I just know I'd have to be able to look into a mirror and say, no, this is fucking worth it, you're doing this, right?
Yeah.
But like that's a bridge I haven't had to cross, and it's not a bridge I'm gonna cross. And I will keep banging the drum of everything I'm doing is above board, because it is. It really is. But I'll keep banging that drum until until like the drum kind of cracks a little and I go, shit, is this still above board? But like, cross it when it comes, and I haven't had to worry about it yet. But yeah, like you understand the angle of that, and I imagine a lot of other people as well would understand the angle of like the fuck that means. Just because like I don't think anyone wants to like go into work one day, regardless of their job, regardless of like if they're a 5-star general or just if we're sticking with military shit, or like some I don't know, minesweeper or whatever the lowest rank is. Like whatever. I don't think anyone wants to have to go into their job and get in shit for doing like their hobby on the side.
Right.
That is relatively harmless. You know what I mean? So like, yeah. Sorry, I kind of rambled there. I lost where I was going.
I understand. I was in that situation to a degree because I do run in the Keep as a game studio as well. And there was some discussion about that being a conflict of interest when I was working, for a proper games company, right? And I was just like, I'm not competing with you, and I don't see the issue, and no one ever had a problem with it, and it was never a problem. But I do know that some people are under contracts where you're just not allowed to do anything else at all. Now, this is the only thing you do. And I don't know why. I guess people would have different circumstances, different needs, different paths and everything, but I could never work for someone who wants to monopolize or control what I do outside of the time that they're paying me for. And I guess that makes me sound like a hypocrite for what I said earlier, but you're still a human being. You're still allowed to like have your pursuits and everything.
Yeah.
If you were like an employee of Coca-Cola and then your hobby was also working at Pepsi, maybe that's a problem.
Yes. Like,
Yeah.
In terms of like conflict of interest stuff, I'll use my previous employer again, because this was a perfect example. Inside of their hiring package, whatever, one of their guidelines, bylaws, whatever the phrasing, terms of service, was effectively that anything you did related to programming or websites or
Mhm.
whatever was theirs, on or off the clock.
Yeah, yeah.
And the logic of it was, well, you could have learned those skills, from us or some bullshit. And like they did that. And at the time I was working before I got hired, like when they sent me the contract, I was working as a designer, and a website, like a web dev kind of thing.
Yep.
And they sent that and I'm looking at it and I'm like, if I freelance for, John Smith here, I'm like, are you saying you fucking own my work from him? And like the hiring got person was like, oh, let me send this off to a lawyer. And like the lawyer accidentally, like some fucking idiot, did a reply all. And basically went, yeah, that's why we fucking pay them a salary. So if they don't like it, they can turn down the job. And I just went, and she sent it to me, and I clicked the path, and I'm like, well, this was fucking stupid. Like I took the job, it was paying me more, right? Like it was worth my time, but it was one of those things where it's like, never speak about anything you do on the fucking side. And like some people would talk about it, like they had a big Slack, they had all this shit, different channels. And every now and then someone would be like, stop fucking talking about your side hustle. They will literally, they can own it by your hiring terms. And like you would see them stop because like people quickly realized they were admitting to shit, right? But yeah, no, like yeah, luckily I've avoided conflict of interest, but yeah, I think it's bullshit in a lot of cases. Like, I think California just recently passed a law about it. I think where I am, Ontario, I think they have a conflict of interest thing that's like in the works, or Canada has one in the works to say like, no, this is bullshit. But like, I'm happy to see that mentality, unless it's like one to one related, and you're like being poached by a someone, like that. It's basically almost impossible or getting harder to like enforce because it's bullshit. Like conflict of interest, unless like you said, you're moonlighting at Pepsi on your off hours from Coke. Like, like Coke doesn't need to know or have any business if you're fucking, I don't know, volunteering at an animal shelter after hours to make sure their books are balanced, right? Like how, like that's in no way, shape, or form is that fucking a conflict of interest, right? Like,
I don't think it is because so by the logic of like, yeah, I own everything that you do that has any, if you could have learned that skill from working for us, like that's ridiculous because then like, well, what about where I learned it before I came to this company? Like, what about
yeah,
the skills that
exactly.
I brought to that you interviewed me for that you wanted to make sure I have? Like, does college, does my teacher, does my friend who taught me a trick own that? Like, in, intellectual property is such a strange idea from the jump. Like the idea that someone can own something in your brain, that I get it if it's like if they find out you literally like copy pasted the code out of one thing and then used it for another company or another client or whatever for your own gain or what, I can understand why that would not be okay. But I don't know. I guess it all really comes down to like, you don't own my brain. Maybe that's the American in me though.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
yes, exactly. That's what I'm getting at. Is like, yeah, like that's, that kind of shit is nonsense, in my opinion. And
Mm.
I'm glad that it's kind of fucking off at this point. We're getting to the point where it's being told to fuck off.
Um, I guess what I've kind of buried this topic in my brain now. Like, I don't know what to say other than like, fuck them for doing that to you or anyone else. But to get back onto your show, can you can you maybe I don't I'm not gonna ask worse, but what do you think are like the interviews that you're the most proud of, if you have any?
So like funnily enough, I someone recently they said, can you send me a few episodes?
Yeah,
Because like
yeah.
they were interested in, like saying yes, but they wanted to like have some ebb and flow, like understand it.
Mhm.
And like for them, I kind of grabbed like someone that they worked previously. I'm like, yeah, this is kind of cheating. And then I sent them another one. But like someone else was like, yeah, I'm gonna listen to a few episodes, reach back out to me after Steam Next Fest. Because I may or may not have fucked up and sent out a bunch of stuff right as Steam Next Fest started, which
Yeah.
is a fucking nightmare time to do it, right? Um, and like they're like, I'm gonna listen to some episodes, and I'm like, I wish I had like the demo reel kind of thing of ones to send you. Like, so there aren't any. I don't want to say like there are some where I'm like, this was a fucking amazing episode. Because more often than not, I think all of my episodes are great, right? Um, and now in terms of like people that I've spoken to where it's like, I don't know how I got this person is really cool. I spoke with David Mullich, who is, at this point legendary, like he's been making games since the fucking 70s, late 70s, early 80s or what have you. Um, like worked on like Heroes 3, Heroes 2, I Have No Mouth, But I Must Scream, so a
That's one of the
bunch of
best
other
games
ones,
ever,
right?
man.
So
Go.
like I've spoken to like, in that case, I've spoken to some like wild people that like I can say, yeah, I'm proud to have, managed to pull these people off somehow. Just because like they're wildly like important or just the way they are in the industry. Like you mentioned Rami Ismail. That was like, him agreeing to talk to me was an interesting thing. Um,
He
like
ignored me.
I don't know how I pulled it off. I think I just got lucky, to be quite honest.
I think I
Um,
made a typo in my message to him, and it probably made me look like a dick. Yeah.
um, made like the spam filter caught you maybe. Um,
Not a spam filter, but just like it maybe it looked unprofessional or something like that, or he just didn't notice it. I mean, there's also timing or mood.
yes.
There's luck.
So like, so when it comes to that in that scenario, like I don't have, I just don't have anyone. Like there
Right.
isn't, I don't think of them in that way. And that's not like, I know that's kind of can sound like a non-answer or like a cheat answer. It's just, I don't, I largely don't think of, oh, this was one of my best episodes or this was a good episode. Because I generally feel good about most of my episodes. And the
Mm.
ones I don't feel good about, I'll listen to and go, that went way better than I thought it did. Like one day, um, like I realized like a few hours after recording that I hadn't eaten anything in like 30 hours kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't like, I was like telling my girlfriend, I'm like, the whole time, like my head was empty. It was terrifying. And like, I thought that was going to be a horrible episode because like the fleeting memories that I had of it, I were not good memory. And then I listened to it, I'm like, no, this was actually perfectly fine. Right. So like, I don't think of them in like, this is a fucking great episode. Like I said, most of them are great episodes in my mind. Like I do a good job most of the time, and the times I'm not doing a good job, I'm doing a good enough job that it's almost indistinguishable. That it's just me, in my own head saying I'm doing a bad job. If all that makes sense.
I I can really relate. I've had people ask me the same, like a similar questions, where it's like, who's your favorite guest you've ever had, or that kind of thing, or what's the best episode, or could you recommend me which ones? I mean, they're the easy go to is like the more celebrity type people, right? You could say, well, someone that person is going to name, recognize, and care about hearing. But I also have this really kind of strict philosophy of the famous people. You can go listen to interviews that they've done before, right? So if I don't have anything like really new to bring to the table, like I'm not gonna undercover some new deep truth about John Romero that he hasn't already revealed to, in 1,000 interviews, for instance.
Or with his own fucking book.
Right, exactly. There might be some, and it may be an interesting conversation just because it's me or whatever, but I don't think I need to. My audience hopefully is not just there for the celebrities, but I do think that that's an important part of it in terms of draw. So like if you have people who have a name, that people recognize, and that's what gets them to listen to the show the first time, great. And then I hope that they stick around for another episode where I'm talking to someone that you've never heard of and that you grow to love them as well. And that's my goal ultimately, is to kind of like promote, using we always use the wrestling analogy. Like if you want to make a star in wrestling, you don't have them wrestle other people who are not stars. You have them, you put the new guy up against John Cena so that now you're elevating their status up to like, oh, he's fighting John Cena or whatever. Same thing in boxing, in any competitive thing. You want to use your stars to make new stars, or else you're just going to run out of stars and all the stars die. So it's
Yeah. Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I understand completely. And like, in the sense of, knowing your audience, to answer it from maybe like that realm,
Mm,
I like, I only have one example, and that's not meant to dismiss anyone else, but like, largely speaking, if someone was like, who should I listen to? And I know that they are uh someone that likes doing shit posts. Like in this example, I'd be like, well, I interviewed fucking Gianni. You can listen to that one.
sure.
Because like I spoke to some friends and I was like, yeah, I'm interviewing this person, and their response was the shit posting guy, and I'm like, okay, cool. So his reach is way fucking wider than I had any awareness of, right? So
Yeah.
in like in specific examples, I can pull episodes out, right? But like you know, outside of that, yeah, it's way too hard because I'm proud of all the episodes, and I like I said, I think most of them, if not all of them, are good in varying degrees of good and good by other people's standard, or like better by some people, whatever, however you want to interpret that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like yeah, that's why it's also hard. Like it's kind of like the question I ask, and I know it's a dirty question, asking people like their favorite video game. And it's like, it's always that Scott Pilgrim moment where like young Neil is on the couch and it's like, well, what do you play? And he's like, that's, the fuck do you mean? Right? Like that's a loaded question. Like, you know? So
Yeah.
like it's asking like a favorite game or asking like a favorite episode or favorite episodes without any kind of grounding context. And that's not me making a shot at you, but just like in general, like I fucking suck at it. And I can only make grounded context with people if I know the person and like I have an idea, right? Um yeah, I hope what I'm saying makes some at least some semblance of sense.
No, I mean that. I think the important thing to remember, especially when you're asking questions and when you're answering questions, is just like your answer is your answer. Like if someone asks you a question that you can't come up with a concise answer for, your answer is I don't have a concise answer for it. Or it's
Yeah.
more complicated than you might think. If someone were to ask me today, what's your favorite video game? It's most likely the answer is whatever one I played most recently that I enjoyed. I'm really fickle, and I don't mean to be, but I think it's also part of like a growing process. Whereas like if you'd asked me, you know, I don't know, 4 years ago, what's your favorite game of all time? I probably would have said Quake. And if you asked me now, hey, do you want to play Quake? I'd be like, I'd rather fucking go play in traffic. If you love this show and you love supporting indie video games, please take a moment to check out In the Cube's upcoming Stellar Valkyrie. Built in the GZ Doom engine, this retro first-person shooter puts you in the universe of space bird bounty hunter Falco, who is on a mission to save his ex-girlfriend from the evil Black Star cult. Just type birdgame.space. That's BIRD game.space into your browser, hit enter, and smash that wishlist button. And stay tuned. And now, back to the show. And it's, you know what I mean? It's things change. What's your favorite
Yes,
Quentin
exactly.
Tarantino movies? Like the one I saw most recently. Which one was that? Hateful Eight. But if I watched Kill Bill right now, Kill Bill would automatically be my favorite movie. Like it's, I'm like a puppy dog with that kind of stuff. But I do think that it's okay for people's taste to change. It's okay for people's takes to be nuanced. If you were to ask me the same question, like what's your favorite, I don't know, episode you've ever done? I couldn't even point out a particular episode, but I would say it'd probably be like particular guests, and they're almost never going to be someone who's like. There are people who I'm like, oh my, when I had Andrew Holschult on, I thought that was a high watermark for me because it opened up a lot of doors. It went from just strictly like these really small indie things to now other people, if I show them my catalog, they'll take me more seriously. So for him giving me the rub made it so that if I go to another, I don't know, uh, David Szymanski, and I'm like, hey man, you want to do my show? Where he might have dismissed it before, but he's like, oh, Andrew did it. Well, Andrew's cool. Must be a good show. I don't know. I don't know what his thought process is even, but I thought of it that way at the time. But I tend to really value, and I'm weird. I don't know if you do this, and I'm curious if you do, but I will go back and like actually listen to my own show. Like And a lot of it is like it's not because I'm in love with the sound of my own voice, trust me, but it's like you miss a lot in the conversation when you're having it, and then when you listen to it again, it might be in a different context. And for me in particular, um, it was so interesting, like years afterward, going back and revisiting, say, my first interview with Fred Schreiber, and then hearing the things that I said to him or that he said to me then, and then later when I go to work for 3D Realms, like, wow, it's almost like it was meant to be. You know, if I had known then where I'd be now because of this conversation, like that kind of context can be very interesting. But the guests that I like the most are usually the ones that I just end up making friends with. You know, I cold reach out to you with like a DM on Twitter, like, hey, I really like your game. Would you like to talk to me? And then the next thing you know, you're talking for 3 hours and you turn off the recording and it's like you talk to that person every day. Those are really cool. Those are some of the best ones for me.
So like I understand everything you're saying, and like
Yeah.
for me, I've experienced like none of that.
Mm.
Um, as like, and I'll explain how, and I'll explain why, because like it's one of those things where I just don't know. Like, I I don't think I've had many people open doors for me. And I don't mean that like, how dare those people. I'm just meaning I don't think I've had a lot of people actively be like, "Oh, you've spoken to a lot of these people. This is fucking cool." Um, like I'm almost at like episode 100. I think I just recorded like episode 97, 98 today. So like,
Congratulations.
thank you. And at like, out of all of those people, I think maybe 10 have actively been like, "Oh, hey, you spoke to this person. This is cool," when I reached out to them. Um, like, so, like, I honestly haven't really experienced that one, which, like, I'm not saying this in a negative way. Like, I don't know how that works, so I don't know how to relate to that feeling. Like, I've spoken to some other people, and they've made the acknowledgement that, like, they had certain doors open. And for me, I'm like, "Yeah, that's happened so rarely." I don't know what that means. Like, I can't understand what you're saying. I haven't had that kind of opportunity.
I actually
Um,
wonder if the door is open and you're just not seeing that the door is open, like in a lot
it
of cases, or you're just not walking
like,
through it.
I don't so that's a good point. I don't know, because um, I don't exactly, like, walk into, like, DMs of people like, "Hey, we spoke to so and so." I don't name drop unless I'm allowed to. That's just, like, the same kind of, like, common courtesy that I take with not DMing or not tagging the person's company unless they say yes. Because like, a lot of people are like, "I'm talking to you in my capacity. We're gonna talk about where I work, but not what I do," kind of thing, right? So it's
Mhm.
like not trying to draw eyes to someone in a way they shouldn't. Um, try basically to avoid like having to get fucking PR involved. Because I've recorded an episode with one person actually, and like basically PR afterwards like, "No, no, no," and like that episode just didn't happen, right? So like it's that's it's kind of the same rule I have is unless I'm given permission, I'm not gonna drop a name. I'm not gonna be like open the door with, "Hey, so and so, I spoke to so and so. You're friends with them." Um, so, like, you're right, like, the door might be open, I just might not know how or when to use it. And
Mm.
also in the same vein, um, like, I know I have an idea of where this fucking came from. It's because I grew up on the internet and, like, I was an annoying teenager or annoying, like, preteen and,
Mhm.
like, had to balance myself hard. And I ended up swinging like, to the other fucking side of the extreme. But, like, I don't actually talk to a lot of people, that I've spoken to as guests. Like, I don't really stay in touch with people. I I kinda leave that for them to do because when I was younger, like, I started on the internet when I was, like, fucking 12, when I was, like, 13. I've been using a link online since I was, like, 13. I'm 36. That's 23 fucking years. Um, just to put in hard perspective as well,
Yeah.
that was when the internet was still kind of the wild fucking west, right? Like, I know now today people talk about that, and there's probably, like, some younger people like, "Yeah, what the fuck does that mean, old man?" And it's like, the internet was the wild fucking west. That's what it means. Like, I was hitting the internet when, like, ASL was what you fucking opened every goddamn conversation with a new person.
Yeah.
Like, ASL was what you fucking had in all of your bios, right? Because like, it was age, sex, location, and for most people, it was fucking 19, California, M or F or whatever, because you were always fucking lying on the internet, right? That was the rule, but it was, 18, California, and then whatever, male, female, whatever. But like it was so wild westy that like as a 12-year-old, I just fucking was able to talk to people, and I was an annoying piece of shit.
Mhm.
Like, it would just be like every day, it'd be like, what are you doing? What's up? And it would just be like, it would be doing that to like the same people every like 3 hours. They'd be like, can you shut the fuck up and leave me alone? And like, you do it to people, they do it to you. But it was just like, because of that, I've had such like a course correct swing that I don't really try and bug people unless they want to talk to me, you know? So like, for in this example where like, the door could be open, it very well could, but it's just, I'm so aggressively pendulum swung the other way because of being an annoying like 12, 13-year-old on the internet. I don't want to be an annoying 36-year-old on the internet, you know?
That's, hmm. The development certainly plays a big role in it, I think, but, like, do you think of yourself as an introverted person in general? Like, because you said you don't
I'm
talk to
not
many people.
actually No, I'm not actually that introverted at all, to be quite honest.
Like like
I don't
IRL, do you just, like, feel comfortable making eye contact and talking to people, being the first person to speak, like, walking up to a stranger, that kinda stuff?
if I have to be, I don't give a shit. Like, it's,
Yeah.
like, for example, like at PAX and stuff, when I used to go to, uh before the podcast, that's how I phrase this. Before the podcast, when I would go to PAX, I would talk to devs the same way I talked to them after the last PAX I went to. The last one I went to, I was handing out business cards, like, "Hey, you should come talk to me," and shit. Um, but like even before that, I would usually walk up to devs and just be like, "Fucking, what's your shit about?" And like be asking them all these questions and stuff. So like you know, I'm I'm not an introvert. I don't care to get involved if I don't have to more often than not. But like, I like talking to people. Like, obviously, I'm doing the podcast, right? Like,
Yeah.
I like getting
Yeah.
to know people and all that stuff. But like, it's just like I said, because of the pendulum swing and how bad it was when I was like 12, 13, 14, or whatever. I course corrected so hard that now it's more, I don't want to be a pain in the ass to somebody. I don't want to be annoying somebody. Uh, and like trying to be effectively what would be like worming my way into their life or be seen as worming my way into their life. Even though I'm pretty certain they wouldn't think about it that way if I was, not bugging them every day. But like I said, I've course corrected so hard that trying to talk to someone uninvited to me is now just the thing that I just don't do, you know?
That's, so the best way I know how to explain this is, like, first of all, I don't think that introversion and extroversion are binary. I think it's far more spectral, and there's a lot more complication to it than just one thing. So, I have known some people who were, like, on the internet are perfectly comfortable talking to whoever. It's like I'm hiding behind a screen. I don't care who I speak to. I don't care what I say to them, and there's some people obviously out there who don't care. They'll tell you to go, jump off a bridge or worse. Um, just because. But then in real life, that same person couldn't go outside of their house, if their life depended on it for more than like a Pepsi at the gas station that's 30 seconds away. Whereas I've also known people who are like maybe shy on the internet because they're like afraid of, like, oh, well, what if I offend someone or whatever, or they're, um, maybe just not comfortable in that particular way of engaging, but at a party, they're like a social butterfly. For me, I find it very difficult to understand the mindset of someone who's afraid to just like ask a question, if that makes sense. So Like, obviously, you're not afraid to, like, email someone or whatever and say, like, "Hey, would you like to be on my show?" You've been very successful at that. But for me, it's like, especially after I've had a multiple hour long conversation with that person, like, I feel perfectly comfortable being like, "Hey, what's up? How's it going? Are you still doing good? You wanna come back on when I don't know, when early access is over or whatever?" Like, I got no issue with that. Or like, "Hey, I'm doing a panel of guests who are all sound designers. You wanna be part of it?" But that might be, like, part of how my brain works. Do you have siblings?
No, I am no, I don't have any siblings. The closest thing I have to a sibling is, one of my cousins that,
Yeah.
we spent a lot of time together. Um, but yeah, no, like, biological siblings that I had to tolerate and deal with 24/7.
Yeah. I'm in the middle of 7. So, I think for me, again, going back to the, like, how you grew up kinda way, for me, it's like I always felt this need to, like, kind of either, I would either run away to my room and read a book or play guitar or whatever to get away from how much noise is going on. But in general, I'm always kinda thinking about, like, how to get the group to move together, like, to be cohesive, to do activities, that kinda thing. So maybe that's why I'm, like, always trying to include everyone. When it comes to, like, indie developers, it's like, with Realms Deep, for instance, like, when we were putting those together, I was I had a reason, like, I had an agenda for why I'm trying to make all these connections. Or if I run into 2 people who's like, one guy's a great programmer and the other guy's a great artist, and I know that they both have similar interests in games and they're both looking for a project, I have no issue with being like, "Hey," I'll just slam them into a group chat and be like, "You 2 need to talk. You need to meet each other. Goodbye. My work here is done." But I think that, yeah, that's definitely like a clear difference in our personality types. I can't imagine. Not that it's a bad thing. There's no wrong answer. It's just like,
So
I've so many people, like friends, genuine, like probably lifelong friends that I've met by interviewing them.
like, I think there's a better way I might be able to put it.
Sure.
Um, when it comes to talking to people now, it's the perception on my part that I need to have a reason to bug them. Because just like I said, the pendulum has swung so hard for me that my concern is that I'm being a pain in the ass to someone, right? So, like, my mindset is if I reach out to someone with a purpose that or an agenda, like the way you're using agenda, like, the purpose, the what have you,
Sure.
um, that's how I function. Because otherwise, like I said, I'm worried I'm going to be just being a pain in the ass to someone. Just again, because like I was a pain in the ass to a lot of people when I was younger, when I was 12, 13.
Yeah.
Like that was just how those conversations, work. Um, and I had more people annoyed with me than not annoyed with me. Um,
There's definitely a balance for that. Um,
yes. And like that's the
yeah.
thing is because I swung so hard to each side that there was no real adjustment period for me finding that balance, and now I'm just perpetually like, I don't wanna bother anyone, so I'll hit them with a, "Hey, just wanted to say XYZ, peace," right? Get the fuck out of their life, so I know I'm not gonna be bothering them. But then, like, the other side of that is, like, you reach out to people and you can talk to them, I can't. Like, it's just I'm always going to be worried I'm a pain in the ass.
Hmm. Uh, I think I have that to some degree. Like, I've certainly had people that I was like, okay, that I could have gotten onto the show, but I felt like this strange, and it was just totally a mental block. But I was like, "Oh, I can't have them on until I've like built up a resume that's worth their while or whatever." Like, I'm not even
I
gonna.
wanna be clear, I fucking dropped that one on my side very
Yeah,
quick.
good, good, good. Yeah,
I
No,
got rid of that shit real quick.
I certainly had that mental block at first. I also was like much more meticulous about like editing every little, if there was a moment of dead air or like if I thought I said the word like too like many like times.
Yeah.
Yeah, or something like that. I was way more sensitive about that shit. And then now, unless I know for a fact that there's like a spot where we got up to take a piss or somebody said something that they definitely don't want to see the light of day, when I'm editing, I'm just skimming through broad strokes. I'm sticking the intro in, the outro, I'm recording my little bit at the end, and then I'm moving on with my life. But I used to, I mean, I would, if I recorded an hour long episode, it would take me an additional 3 hours to edit it because I was so nervous about how it would come across. And I've completely relaxed that. I think it took probably maybe 30 episodes before I just totally dropped all that shit. I don't have any time for that. It's also just time consuming. Like, why work harder than you have to? Um, and then also technology improved quite a bit. Or when I first started, I was kind of like manually doing everything audio wise myself. And then I got introduced to like Auphonic, which is just like you just throw your MP3 file in and it like normalizes levels, does noise canceling, and it's really, really good. I mean, AI has come a long way. Even like what we're doing, we're talking on cleanfeed.net right now. Not a sponsor, just it's what I'm using today. And, versus you were talking about using Craigbot, right? When I first started, Craigbot sucked. Now you're saying it's far more dependable. It's so many things. And that's just a few years. I mean, imagine being like Art Bell or something, coast to coast AM radio, and then coming into the age of podcasting and all that stuff. So, I was talking to my buddy, Rusty yesterday, and he's been in the games industry his entire life. I'm talking about like back in the old days when people were writing all their own, every game was a new custom engine kind of shit. And he's just like one of those dudes that like every time I talk to him, it's just like a wealth of knowledge of, just it's like talking to an old sage who's just seeing everything. And then we were just comparing game development now versus 10 years ago is a huge stretch. And then take that back 30, 40 years. It's not even the same thing. Like porting. You're a retro old person. Like, the difference between porting games now, where you basically just have 3 things you have to do. You want to be certified on Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox. Maybe if you're on a transitionary period, different versions of the same brand console. But if you rewind that to the 80s, if you made a game and you wanted it to be on more than the thing you developed it for, you basically had to make a new game that might be completely different, but with the same cover art, essentially, on up to 30 different machines. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yes. Like now, it's much easier. It's like you fucking
Yeah.
flip a switch in like Unity and it's like, well, where do you want this to go? And you're like, I don't know, PS5, Xbox, Switch, and it goes, here's each version. Good luck, have fun, right?
Yeah. Are you more of a console guy or a PC guy? Or
I'm more PC than anything else. I have a bunch of console games that I need to fucking get back to.
yeah.
Um, backlog is ever growing and I fucking hate it. Because I don't have time for everything. But no, I'm mostly PC. It's the most convenient way for me to play games.
I have made so I wasn't much of a gamer, honestly, as a kid. Like, I definitely played video games, and my dad was actually pretty damn into video games, but for me it was just kind of like this thing you did for fun sometimes. It wasn't like I never identified as a gamer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I I really didn't get into it like PC gaming at all until I was a full ass adult. I was like 22 or 23 years old when I really like started playing PC games. And I at first I went full PC master race. Like, I was like, if it does, mouse and keyboard is superior. I was really into competitive first person shooters and all that stuff. And even though now I still primarily only play games on the computer, if I have to use more than one hand or I can't use a controller, one of the two, I don't have time. It's like, come on. Like, I love a control. I love being just leaned back in my chair with my feet propped up with a controller and all that sort of thing. I don't care about winning. I don't even care about competition at all. I want to enjoy like good stories, and I found that that's something that I always had. Like, even though I kind of it was almost an ego thing where I was like really hardcore about playing competitive Quake and stuff like that. But I would always like find that what I really enjoyed, like what was making me happy, was playing like long form narrative RPGs and stuff like that. And now I feel like I've come full form. Like I've shed that I don't necessarily want to call it toxic because I think it's just a good part of development, but that need to be constantly involved with the game. Like if I can genuinely play your game with just my hand on the mouse, lead back, or just a controller, that's a huge plus in my book.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I understand that. Like there was 'cause right now it's Steam Next Best, and, like, I'm doing this little punch out review kinda thing. Review is a generous term in this case. But, like, the new Turtle game, that's kinda like Hades, Splinter Fate, I think it is. Um, but, like, I said I found it a little easy, and they were like, "We haven't
yeah,
heard that yet." And I'm
yeah.
like it's like, I went too hard into Hades. Like, I'm not a reliable opinion of that. And, like, at the same time, I said, I'm more than happy to have a relaxing game to play. So, like, yeah, like, it's I I used to ask people what game they played to relax. What was their, like, wind down game? And I stopped asking this one just because it was harder to fit in or what have you. I don't remember the exact reason. It's been long. But, like, some people were like, "Yeah, I play League of Legends or I play Dota. That's my wind down. That's how I relax." And it's like, you you don't understand what or how relaxing really can be until you're, like, in the moment going, "Oh, shit, this is actually helping me relax," right? So, like, you know, I 100%, support short games, or I support being able to sit back with your controller and go to town, because like, what's relaxing to you might not work for other people, but, like, at the same time, who gives a shit as long as that helps you relax, right? Like, if Doom Eternal is your relaxing game, then, like, fucking go nuts. Enjoy, like, relax,
I
enjoy
think
your time
you're
with it.
not relaxing. I think you just don't like to relax if that's your game.
Like, I'm not okay, so here's the thing with Doom Eternal. When I was playing, because I have a heart condition, it's not like a big deal. It's a upper vascular arrhythmia. I forget the proper term. The upper chamber likes to go
Right,
fucking weird sometimes.
right,
It's the lesser of the 2, issues when it comes to arrhythmias. Because if the bottom chamber makes clots, the top chamber is just, like, take some blood and there's no blood to give, or, like, the bottom chamber is not open, so it's just basically trying to, like, you jamming your finger into your hand or what have you, right?
right.
But anyway, I have a little thing for that, so I was using that to check my pulse, and, like, when I first started playing Doom Eternal, my pulse would be, like, I'd be running through that shit at, like, 150, 160, 170, and then by the end of the game, by the end, like, and doing, like, hard challenges and stuff, my pulse didn't change. My pulse would be sitting at, like, normal resting rate of, like, 60 or 70, like, what it was before I was playing the game. So, like, it is possible to relax and play Doom Eternal. It's a very weird thing to think about, though, because, like, that game is not a game you should be relaxing with, but, like, it is possible. I'm just throwing that out there. It is weirdly possible for that game to be, like, nothing on your blood pressure.
I, I of course, whatever you like, and everybody likes different things. If you like listening to heavy metal music in the bubble bath, sure. I mean, and it's so crazy because like even video games are so like diverse now in terms of like what your name is Link. When we're kids, it's like so cut and dry. Like that kind of video games means a certain thing, and then now it runs the expanse of like choosing what penis to put on your female character in your Baldur's Gate profile to you know uh, Animal Crossing, and the only thing that you might like both games, but I'm saying like the wide range of what video games means now is so different. So
Yeah, exactly.
you could have two people who both spend all of their time playing video games and have nothing else in common. I think it used to be more of like a I guess there was like are you a Street Fighter guy or are you a I don't know. That was a dividing line, but even that was kind of later, in comparison to say the difference between Zelda, Sonic the Hedgehog, and Mario. I think you like to say Mario, so I'm trying to do it like you do. Mario. Whatever happened to the good old days when computer role playing games spent more time telling great stories than stressing you out with season passes and needless grinding? Call of Ragnar is our effort to bring back the best in RPGs. Play in the immersive world as two friends adventure into a murder mystery that lands them in the middle of a battle between gods. Head over to callofseregnar.com. That's call of SAREGNAR.com for more info. Be sure to wishlist on Steam.
It, so I dated a girl from California for like 7-8 years. She used to give me shit for how I said Mario. Um,
Yeah.
so like I say it the Canadian way. I don't know.
My
Eh,
my wife is from the Chicago area and I'm from Alabama, so we have completely different ways. I have worked on my accent as an adult to try to be more not palatable. It's not like I think a southern accent makes you sound dumb, but just understandable to people when I'm speaking. Like when I moved to California when I was 20, 21, something like that. And then I just started talking to my neighbor and the guy just looked at me like I was an idiot and he's like, what the fuck did you say to me, bro? And I said like, "Hey, how y'all doing today?" And he's like, "What did you say?" I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. How are you doing today, sir?" And he's like, "Oh, we're doing pretty good, man. Hang loose." And I'm like, "All right, well, I got to work on that." So, um, let's see. What are like classic games that you like and like let's kind of just stick to say I don't know, N64 time frame. Are there any maybe lesser known titles from that you would say like stick out to you in your memory? I don't know why
for
that's
the
just been on my radar a lot lately. Like
for the
unknown.
six the 64. This So like luckily for you, I was I was a Nintendo kid. I didn't really fuck around with PlayStation until like a year before, or even after the PS2 was out. I want to say like
Yeah.
I got a PS2 late. I got a PlayStation late. But no, for the 64, I don't know, man. Most of the games I would have played were largely known. Like
Yeah.
um, I would assume, I would make the presumption or the assumption, because like, Goemon was a fantastic game, fucking insanity. It's just
Mm.
chaos. But Goemon 64,
Sure.
um, I
Sure.
think it's Mystical Adventure starring Goemon, I think is the proper title, because I think there's two of them. One's a side scroller, and one of them is like an open world ish, action RPG or whatever, like whatever you'd call Zelda. Um, there's that, there's Bomberman. Those were great. Um, I didn't play a lot of like weird low key titles. I think Mischief Maker is known enough, but
Mm.
Mischief Maker, Sin and Punishment, if you like real on rail shooters, which got a sequel on the Wii as well, which was hilarious if you found it cheap.
What's the game where you play as like a bumblebee?
Buck Bumble. Buck Bumble is
Yeah.
so I don't know if Buck Bumble was a like, because it was a big meme for a while, and I don't know if it was a meme because people were like dunking on it, because unironically Buck Bumble was made by the guys that made Star Fox.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
and it was I used to I rented that game numerous times. I've beaten that game. It's Buck Bumble is unironically like an incredibly fun game.
For the young
Um,
people, there used to be this thing called renting where you went to like a movie gallery or a blockbuster and you went to a section where there were physical video games and you paid a money to take it home for the weekend and then you had to bring it back. And then sometimes you would do that multiple times with the same game. I'm just trying to help out our young people.
um, but yeah, like, it's because if you're looking for like actual recommendations, I don't know how good I am with that. Like,
Sure.
if you give me 1 sec, I can pull up a quick and easy at what I have, like at quote unquote arm's length. Um, because like if you didn't grow up with the 64, it would be easily understood like why some of like what you would think would be the more well knowns. Um, but like stuff like GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, which was like the spiritual sequel to GoldenEye, were
Yeah.
fantastic games. You could never go wrong with Mario Kart. Mario Party 2 or 3 were fantastic. If you really wanted to fuck up your hand, you'd play Mario Party 1. Um, and I'm gonna make the assumption, you can play a lot of games, you don't know what that means. Mario Party 1 had like 1 or 2 mini games where it was like rotate the joystick in a clockwise motion as fast as you can.
Right.
And like Nintendo envisioned that you would like calmly just take your thumb and you would just rotate it around, which didn't work. What you did is you would slam your fucking palm down and you would just go to town cranking as hard as possible. And what that would immediately do is give you a blister and rip your palm open, and your palm would just be a bloody fucking mess.
Right.
It was so bad, Nintendo said, if you send us proof of purchase of Mario Party, we'll send you a fucking power glove that locks in to it. Um, so like I'd avoid Mario Party 1 just because you don't need that in your life. Um, but like, 1080 snowboarding's a classic, the Banjo-Kazooie games, and then, by extent, Donkey Kong 64, some amazing rare games. Um, so there were some shitty games like I think it was shitty. Like Iggy Wrecking Ball or something where you literally played as like a fucking bouncy ball with a face and you could like latch on to shit. I don't know. Um, Chameleon Twist, they were interesting little games. Like I'm literally just going through the games that I have immediately available to me. But honestly, I would say my recommendations would be no different than like something from like most YouTubers, big or small channels, like Cultured Vulture, I think, or Culture Vulture or whatever.
Right.
Um,
Right.
like he has some like for those kind of games, like yeah, I'd honestly just say pull up some of those and see what they recommend because it's I have no deep cuts is the real like answer is I don't have deep cuts, and if I do, I don't remember them as deep cuts. So I'm a terrible person to ask for this.
No, it might be a because honestly, I think a lot of the things that you did say are deep cuts. Uh, but uh, maybe maybe you were the wrong person to ask for a deep cut because you're such a game nerd in general that you would think of things that are sort of for most people deep cuts as like, oh, everybody knows Buck Bumble or whatever. I think the reason why people like Buck Bumble and it
Is
became
the
a
intro?
meme is the theme song. Like people love
Yeah.
that theme song.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I say this like unironically. Buck
yeah.
Bumble is a fantastic game.
No,
I
you're not the only person that's told me this. Like that's why
Yeah,
I
but
brought it
what
up.
I mean is I don't know how many people say that unironically, right? Like I don't know
Yeah,
how many people are saying it just because of the meme,
yeah.
or if they dislike it because of the meme. But yeah, no, like Buck
You,
Bumble's fantastic.
you're in here a deep cut. I like the Castlevania 64. I enjoyed it. I had a good time.
They were interesting. I only rented them once. I can say that much. The first one, the second one was far more palatable than the first one.
Yeah.
I remember from like being 12 or whatever.
I even liked Lord of Shadow on I think that was the PS3. Now I think everyone hated that, but I thought it was pretty damn good. It was fun. At least I played the vast majority of the game. Um, but I don't know. I'm a terrible critic. I've also noticed that. Like I tend to like things based on the way they make me feel, and then have a really difficult time articulating what I do or don't enjoy about it. If that makes sense. So I would be like, for instance, I think I would be a terrible QA tester. I have done certainly lots of QA, but it's like, I'm saying like, hey, change this or put this in your menu kind of stuff, or, I don't really like this part right here, but I'm not like I could never give someone like out of 10 scores or stuff like that. It's just not, doesn't intuitively happen in my brain that way. And I also like generally just want to say nice things. So I'm not harsh enough, maybe, in a lot of cases. Like I want
I
to
don't have that
find,
problem.
yeah. I want to find something nice to say.
Yeah, so,
Uh,
like, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I
yeah,
don't have that problem just because for me, I think of, like, a 7 out of 10 a good game. Like, I don't
sure.
I hate what we've seen in the last, I don't know, 20 years now, where, like, a 5 out of 10 means it's absolutely trash. Like, no, a 1 out of 10 is trash. A 5 out of 10 is 50, it's average. For everyone outside of America, that's a pass. Like,
Yeah, okay. That's also a thing
um,
in America. Like we
that
have like the
yeah.
70 or above is
Yeah, well,
acceptable. Yeah.
that's why I
Yeah.
said it, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
like,
okay.
I to a degree understand why 70 is considered, like, the pass, but the problem is now that, like, if a game gets a 70, people think it's shit. Like, well, no, it's pass. It's an average game. Like, fuck off. So,
I
like,
think on that note that certainly it doesn't mean bad, but the question that I'm looking for when I'm looking at a review is not good or bad, it's worth my time, if that makes sense. So I'm skimming for the 9 and ups. And that doesn't mean that every game that's not a 9 or above is shit at all. And I just said that I liked Castlevania 64. So don't think that I'm giving you any kind of new insight here. I just mean like if I'm going through like I don't know, like a magazine and there's like God, a magazine, remember those? And and it would say
I write one, so yes, I definitely remember those.
which one? What are you working on?
It's what I started doing, on the side just to, my partner's a designer. She's is still in design.
Okay.
I left that field. Um, so to, like, give her something to do or I shouldn't that sounds way worse. To
Damn.
give her something to
Make sure she listens to that.
enjoy doing design with
Yeah.
and, like, have fun doing instead of just, like, the same old corporate whatever,
Yeah.
I started just writing mini reviews so that she can do like a magazine layout stuff. So like I don't get it printed, but
Yeah.
like yeah, they're dead. I know what you mean.
No, I mean
They
I
still
have
exist.
Fearzine is like at least the last month or whatever. I'm like helping them with their Kickstarter in terms of like doing pre rolls on the show about it and everything. And then there was Reload, and then before Reload there was the E1M1 and all that stuff. Like I know people still like magazines. I'm just saying back when I used to read magazines to figure out what games I wanted to play.
Yeah.
I'm looking for the 9 and up club, not because I think everything that's below a 9 is bad, but I'm just like I only want to play the games that are like actually really worth my time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also like if you had limited funds, right? You were aiming for that.
Right.
Um
Yeah. Yeah.
for better or for worse, for whatever the ranking scale means today, you know.
Yeah.
I just personally don't like it. I don't like that, we look at like an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10 and say, well, that's not amazing. Like it's probably fine.
And there's
Like
also
it's
taste too. It's like,
yeah,
I didn't like this game, but you might really like it. And I think that things like bugs, like things that break the game or like horrible UI issues, those are problems. And that's what I'm good at pointing out. Right. But in terms like, is this, are you going to enjoy this story or style of gameplay? I do not know the answer to that. I could say, for working in boomer shooters for so long, if you like Quake, you'll like, and then I can name 100 games that are exactly like Quake or Doom or whatever, and these are the ones that are the most like it, and these are the ones that are the least like it, and maybe you'll like it. I don't know, but I can't tell you if you're gonna, which one you're gonna enjoy the most, other than like knowing your individual taste. So making a broad brush review of a game in terms of its quality based on anything that's not like objective criteria, I don't know how to do that.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, I
And
can
like
just tell you my opinion.
that's also largely when I talk about game. I
Mhm.
don't talk about games I don't like.
Yeah,
I don't talk about games that I wouldn't recommend. I only talk about games, largely speaking, modern games. There's the better way to put it. For modern games, if I don't like the game, I'm probably not gonna mention. I'm probably not gonna talk about it.
right.
Which is why most, if not all, of the little review things I do are just for games that I think you should check out. And like that's kind of the metric of that I work by is, do I recommend checking it out? And that's it. I thought about making jokes about, like 5 out of 12, oranges. or whatever, like just nonsense stuff because, the joke of it all that those mean nothing anyway. But like I sided more with just, do I recommend it? Like it's easier for me just to say I recommend this and then leave it at that, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. I got really used to thinking about games in terms of like marketability too. Um, so like, is this genre popular right now? And when I mean popular, I don't mean like do people like it. I mean like, does it actually generate money? Or also, does it have the N word in it? That you would be surprised what pops up. Some crazy stuff. And then also kind of thinking about like how does it represent the brand too? So it was less about like quality, whatever, but like, is this a good fit for our library at this time? Even like, do we really need another shooter? Maybe we should have some other genre, like that kind of thing. And I
Yeah.
think that it's interesting. A lot of companies sort of will, you know, go all in on a certain thing, a certain topic, a certain genre, and like Hooded Horse, right? They only do strategy games. Now, there's a lot of different types of strategy games. Don't get me wrong, but like they only do that. For the longest time, when I was at Slipgate, it was like all games that are like Doom, Hexen, and Quake. And then that changed over time, and that was like a conscious change because we were like, hey, we really want to do other stuff. We want to work. Yeah, Tempest Rising, I think, is going to come out sometime next year, and it's like Command and Conquer style game, and I think that's cool. But yeah, I really am glad that like I mentioned this a bit earlier, just like getting into other genres, but like getting out of the box that I was originally in with first person shooters has been huge. Speaking of first person shooters and Nintendo games, Perfect Dark, you mentioned it earlier, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of my listeners actually wrote in a question for you that I'm just now thinking about. But did you play like the remaster of it that was on like Xbox or whatever?
I actually tried playing the Xbox One, and for whatever reasons, there was a shader issue, and I don't, I'm not, I bought an Xbox, a SAD, the Xbox S all digital or
Right,
whatever, right?
right.
Um, Horrible mistake, by the way. I'm never gonna fucking buy an all digital edition console ever again. Mainly because like immediately after we got that, 'cause my partner and I, we bought it together.
Hmm.
Immediately after doing that, realized we could have just fucking asked for the disc version and paid the extra like $20 because like you see games on sale that we can't buy because of it, right? Anyway,
Yeah,
it's just collecting dust, but it was like a less powerful version of like the Xbox S or that generation either which way. And like I don't know if it was an issue with that or the game itself, but it wasn't rendering shaders properly, so it was unplayable. So no, sorry, the long answer is no. I tried, I couldn't do it. I just could not do it. Like physically, I couldn't do it. It wasn't like, oh, this is horrible. I'm against this. It was just I physically could not do it. Like it was unplayable for me, and I don't know why. Um, and I don't know enough about Xboxes to know if like I needed to do something, in settings. It's a console, and my brain console just works, right? But like no, I didn't replay that one. The only ones I've played are uh the 64, like the physical, like
yeah.
physical and or not physical, but like actual the 64 version, not any remasters, not ports or however you want to phrase it.
There's like some weird examples of just like classic Nintendo games that just ended up on the Xbox 360 or something like that. I remember, was it Conker's Bad Fur Day just randomly had just an
They were
Xbox
so
remake?
those would have been because so what happened was Rare,
Yeah.
Rare existed. Rare made Conquer,
Uh
Bad
huh.
Fur Day. Rare made Perfect Dark. Rare made Banjo Kazooie, Banjo Tooie, um, Diddy Kong Racing, etc., etc.,
Oh,
etc.
I love Diddy
And
Kong
what
Racing.
ended up yeah, it was,
Yeah.
it was a very like it was a really interesting game. The DNA of it, I think you can see in modern Mario Kart,
Hmm.
intentional or otherwise, because it's Nintendo. You never know. But Rare was bought by Microsoft, so like all of their non Mary or non Nintendo quote unquote games or characters, they eventually just stuck them into that collection, and that's why you saw like the Conquer sequel. on the Xbox, and that's why you saw the Rare replay where it was all of those Rare games firing off uh onto Xbox, right?
Mhm.
So that's why those popped up there, is because Rare was bought uh by Microsoft and then turned into the Sea of Thieves Valley. I don't know if they're doing other things. Um, if they're happy, that's fantastic. If they're not happy, I hope they're given the chance to be happy at some point. But yeah, that's why you see, all those old Rare games popping up there and nowhere else.
So do you think that the because I know there's supposed to be Kai wrote in about this too. The Perfect Dark game on the Xbox, like the new Xbox, is that do you have any insight on that? I don't follow this stuff.
I think it's supposed to be kind of imsimi.
Okay.
I'm really hoping that it takes the place of Deus Ex because, we were getting another Deus Ex and then it was canceled. Then we were getting another one um after Embracer bought everything they could fucking get their hands on, and
I
then it
was
was
there.
canceled.
I was there.
Yeah. So like uh I'm looking forward to it strictly from the standpoint of because like the Deus Ex games weren't like Cyberpunk. They were kind of like the beginning days of Cyberpunk. And Deus Ex was the first sim that I played, that I got into, that I enjoyed. So like that Cyberpunk level of tech and everything, that's like what that's kind of my like holy grail in terms of what I like about Cyberpunk. So I have high hopes for it because like it's probably going to be just MSIMI enough, just like the last few Deus Exes.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be Cyberpunk ish enough to be everything I want, everything I've wanted, or everything I've like needed, or what have you, right? So like
Right.
that's basically my insight, is that this is going to be hopefully the next like the next Deus Ex that I can sit back, enjoy. I hope it's ImSim because like I think they taunted about it, or implied it was, and I'm really hoping it does. Like even if it's just little hub world stuff, I'm all for it because I like the idea of fucking around before doing anything of importance. In a in a world where with vermithitude, I'm all for.
I really love immersive sim as a genre. Like Deus Ex, obviously. I would say that like Gloomwood, for instance. Like I can't wait for that to be out. And like there have been a few recently that have like kind of popped up as demos. I think that I can't remember the name of it, but there was this one that I played a demo of that I saw at EGX like a last year or something like that. That was it was like a MSIM that also involved time travel. And then I think that New Blood hired the guy, and I thought they were going to publish that, but it turns out they just put him on Glenwood, which is fine. I mean, that's cool too. Maybe they'll finish his title also afterwards. But they're really hard to develop. I kind of like loosely got to see how things went with Core Decay for a while, because I was like before the whole Embrace or you know Saber breakup and all that craziness that went on with that. I was gonna be the brand manager for Core Decay, and it just like I was in love with that the whole idea of that game. I can't say anything about what it plays like because obviously, you know, but gosh, well, I'm so excited about that entire genre. Are there any other like kind of newer ones that are on your radar?
Uh, Yeah, yeah. For example, like, man, I'll probably screw up the name. I spoke to one of the devs recently, Anastasia.
Anath-
It
Anesthesia.
it's
Okay.
basically, um, it's basically Jurassic Park MSim.
Oh, that sounds dope.
Um, I'm probably not really selling it the way they would want me to, or
Mhm.
want people to, but basically, like you're exploring a like an Isla Var or whatever, where they were making dinosaur mutant thing. And it's an MSIM. Um, the demo was out. I think the demo still might be out. The Kickstarter's done now. They got funded, luckily. Um, but that one I'm excited for because you know it felt nice. It seemed interesting. Um, them getting funding means they the hopefully escaped the MSIM curse.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, like off the top of my head, unfortunately, no. just because especially right now, because like Game Fest, I'm like just like slamming so many games that it's kind of hard to actively be like, yeah, this is an sim. This is one that I played a while ago that I thought was cool.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's the one that like comes to mind, the most recent one at the very least. There's definitely been other ones, but like on the spot, I'm not going to be able to remember their name. Um, there was another one, um, Gia, I think. Um, it's gonna be Slabjank because I believe it's like actively from like that area too. Um, but like it it has high hopes of being a massive game, and like I don't know how they're going to do it. I wish them the best of luck in doing it.
Hmm.
But it looks like it's gonna be a massive goddamn game. Um, and it played interestingly enough. Like it played well clean enough when I tried it. So like I'm looking forward to that one. Um, I don't know if I'm looking forward to it more just to see them pull off the scope or the gameplay. It was like it sat on like a weird line in that sense. Um, Other than those, Stalker 2. I think that's the best. I think that's the best you're gonna get out of me with my, jumble of nonsense in my head trying to remember what all I've tried recently that's actually ImSim and trying to like pick it out from all the other stuff.
Well, I mean, this could be the last question because I think we've been here for like 2 hours, which is for me short, but I know you gotta, you're, what, it's like much later there, right? You're East Coast time?
Yes, East
Yeah.
Coast for me.
Yeah. Let's wrap this up pretty soon here. But the last question I wanted to ask you was basically like, what games are you the most excited about right now? And that could be something you've played recently or that you're looking forward to.
Uh, right now, shit. Fuck, I don't even know. So here's a big problem. I don't know what's actually coming out. I go to like every now and then I'll go into like GameStop.
Hmm.
I keep wanting to call it EB Games. That's what it was in Canada
I remember
like
Rhino
years ago.
Games, and then it was EB Games, and then it was GameStop.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we had that in Canada. I think it was just EB, and then like that was it. And then like they all turned, or they were buying other game stores that I just
Yeah,
never heard of.
they were just buying up all the local game stores. Like so, like EB bought out Rhino, and then EB got bought by
GameStop.
GameStop. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Um, but like
like a
that's like
Russian
that's a,
doll. You know what
that's yeah. At this point, it fucking is. Um, like at this point, because like what? Sorry. So what I was saying is, what we do is we'll like go into GameStop, and like me and my girlfriend will look at games and just be like, "Oh shit, this is a thing that's coming. Oh shit, this exists." Right. So
Yeah,
like it's really hard because some of the games I'm looking forward to are games that have been out and I just haven't had time to buy them or pick them up after buying, right? Like Refantasia or whatever it's pronounced. I'm looking forward to getting a chance to play that. I Armored Core 6, I look forward to that one. Dragon's Dogma 2, I'm looking forward to that when I have time, when I can, have time to pick it up. Um Getting back to Elden Ring, like the new Dragon Ball game, the new Gundam Battle Breaker, games that are already decidedly out and I'm just behind the times. Um, but yeah, like I don't think there's anything on the top of my head that I'm like sitting patiently waiting for. Like, some easy answers could be like I'm waiting for Gloomwood to be out of early access before I touch it, only
sure.
because it's an IMSIP and there's going to be so much stuff. Um, I'm waiting for Cultic 2 because, or not Cultic, I don't know if it's being called Cultic 2.
The
The
next episode
follow
of
up,
Cultic.
yeah,
Yeah,
part
yeah,
2, episode 2, whatever.
yeah.
Because like the first one was just so much fucking fun. Like Sulaco, I'm looking forward to that coming out of early access.
Have you had
Um,
Jason on your show from Cultic?
yeah, he was
Yeah.
actually
Okay.
one of the earlier episodes. I want to
Yeah.
say, um, shit, I want to say like he was like the first year, give or take. Um,
He's just a great guest. Like he's one of those guys that just you get Jason talking, he could talk forever. He's so great. Really, really sweet guy too.
yeah, like yes, he was probably one of my first long episodes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but like yeah, like I spoke to him well before Cultic came out. I think one of the demos had come out. Um, yeah, he was episode 24, the first year.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going through everything for what I had. Um, so like, there are games I'm looking forward to. It's just the problem with me is I don't know what's out. I don't know. I forget about games and like their existence until I see them. It's like, oh shit, this was something I wanted to play. This was something I was looking forward to, right?
Mhm.
Um, just because like the backlog, I sometimes just fall off of a fucking game to play demos and then like I don't get to go back to the game. Like, Deathloop, for example, I've been trying to find time to go back to Deathloop, but at the same time, I've been trying to find time to go back to some PS2 games that I want to replay or I want to, when I was younger, I never fully beat kind of thing, right? So
Yeah.
like it's just s- I it's a shitty answer, I know, but like yeah, there's a bunch of stuff I'm looking forward to, but like in the moment of trying to think of it, unfortunately I don't know. It's just
I'll do
there's a
it for
lot
you.
of stuff.
Everybody go play Scald against the Black Priory. It's the best game I've played in I don't know how long. It's amazing. This is Link endorses. No. No, man, I really, really appreciate your time. I know it's getting pretty late, so we'll turn you loose. But it's always a pleasure to talk to you and pick your brain. I always learn new stuff too because you're way deeper in a lot of it than I am. So anytime you want, you're welcome to come back, and I'm gonna try to get back on your show when we get ready to start pushing Stellar Valkyrie out the door. So we'll talk.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Anytime just hit me up. We can definitely work that out. Uh Sorry, that sounded way too corporate in my head. But yeah, no, yeah, 100%. Whenever you're ready to come back, more than happy to it. Like, I just today actually recorded my first returning guest. I had
Oh.
Dana Nightingale. She came back, and
Hmm.
the new game. I'm calling them New Game Plus. That's the goal. I might change my mind after like the second one because might first something else. We'll fucking find out.
Yeah, but what are
But
you gonna call the third time that they come on
oh,
the show?
I'm just gonna keep calling it New Game Plus.
New game plus
uh,
plus. Like,
Maybe, yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, no. So like, if depending on the context in which you want to come back, yeah, 100%. If you want to come back just for New Game Plus, where it's even less tangentially related to video games, because today I don't think I really spoke to Dana about video games. I think we spent like 40 minutes talking about a movie,
sure,
or something, right? But
yeah.
like, depending on the context, I'm more than happy to talk with you in the same context of like how the other episodes were framed, or something more like this, where it's just there's a one driving force, and anything else is just sort of what we get to with it, because that's how New Game Plus is intended to go for me, at least.
Are you so are you on YouTube now?
I
Yes.
I throw all my stuff up on YouTube. Yeah, there was a period where I
Yeah.
didn't. I still don't have good title cards or thumbnails or whatever. That's a work in progress.
But
But
you got the show on there. Is it RSS feed driven or are you doing it manually?
uh manual, yes. I don't know what you asked there. Sorry.
Oh no, you can put your RSS feed for your podcast straight into YouTube and it auto populates now. You don't have to upload
Oh,
it. Yeah, I was
Um, so I upload all of mine as videos. I don't know if I can just dump the MP3 to like not have the video. If that's a thing, send me how to do that.
uh, I'll
Because
teach you
right
how to do
now,
it off
yes,
there.
awesome. Because what I'm doing now is I make the video, and the
Yeah.
video is what goes up. I presume I used to have Google Podcast or whatever the fuck they called that. That was RSS fed out of uh, Spotify's for podcasters, whatever the fuck they call themselves now. Used to be Anchor, and that's in my head how it is.
Yeah.
It was set up that way, so I don't know if that is what populates the podcast or
Yes.
not. So yeah, please show me. I'll figure that shit out. Because yeah, if it's just an audio thing, I do not have just an audio thing.
Well, It's such a great way to end. The reason why I say is like, folks who are listening, please go check out the Red Tunic podcast.
It's fucking everywhere. It's
Yeah,
everywhere.
it's everywhere.
It's as far as I know, it is on all of the places that matter or that are easily accessible. In the very least. There we go. There's the plug.
Yeah, man. All right. Let's call it for the day. We'll see you next time.
Sure.
Thank you to Link for coming on the show. Really appreciate his time, and like if you haven't already, definitely for real go check out Red Tunic podcast. Give him a shout out. Let him know that I sent you. Of course, I'm sure he'll know if it comes from our podcast. And I want to say thank you to everyone who is supporting us on Patreon. So thank you to Shannon, to Bridge, to Michael, to Frederick, to Brad, and to Dots. And if you would like to be mentioned on that list, all you got to do is become a paid member over on our Patreon page. I do occasionally give stuff out to free tier members, and that's great. And I definitely want to build that up and have more people kind of just getting involved, getting the updates and everything. But I do have to reward the people who are actually rewarding me. Just consider that if you want to support, just head over to inthekeep.com and it's on the support page. There's lots of other ways to support as well. You can buy merch off our merch store. I'll be making new merch hopefully in the near enough future. It's a bit of a weird transition right now as I'm getting ready to move actually, but hopefully once we're settled and get a little bit of cash flowing, we'll be able to do that. And then what else? Oh yeah, you can make light donations and stuff too. We have PayPal. We have what's that thing called? There's like I feel so unprofessional. If you're listening to this podcast, there should be a way where you can donate through Captivate. And I'm going to not look it up right now because I don't deserve it. But maybe next time I'll have familiarized myself with the way to do this. But I believe it uses Stripe PayPal. But I mean, if you just want to like throw a tip out there or something. Really, really cool. Not expected. The podcast is it's totally free. But if you want to get it early, get mentioned on the list. We'll maybe get some free key drops. And also, the biggest perk, I think, is access to our private Discord for supporters, where we do a lot of talking about all kinds of crazy topics. So that's where I post most of the news that you would get as an exclusive member of our club or whatever. I don't know. I don't like to exclude people. I don't even feel comfortable saying that. I do like to reward people who put their money where their mouth is and help out. Till next time. Gosh, I'm so fucking off today. I love you. God love you. Till next time, stay in the keep. Mwah.